Please.
You had a Truth Social post earlier this afternoon talking about a Wall Street Journal report as a fake story.
Yeah,
It's
fake.
Sort of
Wall Street Journal is fake.
So
Less fake on financial than it is on gossip.
Can you just confirm that my understanding of what's happening is accurate? As I understand it, that story framed it like we had just lifted the U.S. a restriction on intelligence.
No, it said that I gave Ukraine permission to shoot missiles deep into Russia. I didn't do that. Second of all, they're not using our missiles. They're using, I think, European missiles or from someplace, but they're not using ours. And what they do, I don't control that. But I do control our missiles. They're not shooting our missiles in. It was a fake story. Wall Street Journal does a lot of fake stories. Go ahead.
What about Tomahawk missiles? Putin is definitely
Well,
afraid
the
of
problem with the Tomahawk that a lot of people don't know, it'll take a minimum of 6 months, usually a year, to learn how to use them. They're highly complex. So the only way a Tomahawk is going to be shot is if we shot it, and we're not going to do that. But there is a tremendous learning curve with the Tomahawk. It's a very powerful weapon, very accurate weapon, and maybe that's what makes it so complex. But it will take a year. It takes a year of intense training to learn how to use it. And we know how to use it, and we're not going to be teaching other people. It's too far out into the future. And as you know, we are going to be making a big trip next week. Some of you are going with us. We'll be going to Malaysia, South Korea, and Japan. In South Korea, I'll be meeting with President Xi of China. We'll have a pretty long meeting scheduled. We can work out a lot of our questions and our doubts and our tremendous assets together. So we look forward to that. I think something will work out. We have a very good relationship. But that'll be a big one. We canceled the meeting with President Putin. It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it. But we'll do it in the future. But next week we'll be with many of you in those locations that I told you. Then it's back to Washington. So thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can you tell us a little bit about why you're elevating sanctions against Russia right now?
I just felt it was time. We've waited a long time.
Mr. President,
Yes,
I saw, Mr. President, that you said as recently as yesterday that you still believe that Putin wants to end the war.
Yeah,
Then today
I do.
You took this step to ratchet the sanctions and put more pressure on him. What else are you going to do to encourage him to get there, or can you explain why you do believe that he wants peace?
Yeah, it's a good question. Today is a very big day in terms of what we're doing. Look, these are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their two big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled. We just answered having to do with the various forms of missiles and everything else that we're looking at, but we don't think that's going to be necessary. We would like to see them just take the line that has been formed over quite a long period of time and go and let's go home.
Vladimir Putin had not been honest and forthright in his talks with you. Just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your feelings about that, and also, if I may, to Munir Rutte, just your thoughts on whether Ukraine should get Tomahawks. Thank you.
Well, I think that in terms of honesty, the only thing I can say is every time I speak with Vladimir, I have good conversations, and then they don't go anywhere. They just don't go anywhere. So in that sense, but no, look, he's fighting a war. He's in a war. That's two very competent sides. And that's the way war is. You never know with war, but I would say that it's time to make a deal. A lot of people are dying. You know, they're not Americans, but they're people. They're souls, and they're dying by the thousands. Worst since World War II, and we really should stop it. Better than anybody's ever done.
Mr. President, that the sanctions that you're announcing today will push Putin to the...
Well, I don't know that they will. I think that they'll certainly have an impact. They're massive sanctions. It's sanctions on oil. The two biggest oil companies, among the biggest in the world, but they're Russian. They do a lot of oil. And hopefully it'll push, hopefully he'll become reasonable, and hopefully Zelensky will be reasonable too. You know, it takes two to tango, as they say. And we're going to find out. They hate each other. These two people hate each other. You know that better than anybody. And it makes it more difficult than it should be. This should be easier to do. But the level of hatred between Zelensky and Putin is very substantial.
Could I add one thing? What the president is doing today with these sanctions is putting more pressure, of course, on both parts, in this case on Russia. It's all about changing the calculus, making sure that Putin understands that the president's vision this weekend of having a ceasefire, stop where they are, as you literally said, that this has to be step one now. And for him to really accept that vision and to come to the table. And then you have to put pressure, and this is exactly what he did today.
Along with Europe. I mean, Europe, look, they've actually become friends of mine. I think
Yes.
all of them.
Yeah.
We have a very close relationship, and they want to see it end too. They really want to see it end. But I can say they're totally committed. If this went on for 10 more years, Europe is behind them. They just can't let that happen.
Consistent from this president, when we first met again after your re-election in Mar-a-Lago in November, you said we have to stop the killing. This is close to your heart, and this is your vision. That's why this war needs to end. When it comes to Tomahawks or whatever system, it's up to individual nations to decide whatever they want to supply to Ukraine. NATO doesn't take a position, but I can assure you this. When the president called me in July and said we want to again send weapons into Ukraine, paid for by our allies, the Canadians and the Europeans, that was an important moment. And that is now taking place, and the ambassador, myself, we're working hard at this. Already a couple of $1 billion of weaponry into Ukraine from the US, paid for by allies. So I'm not going to comment on the Tomahawks, but when it comes to the US and all the support for Ukraine, it is there and it is close to the president's heart, and I know this.
I will say this, and Mark can say it better than anybody. The European nations and Canada have really pulled together, and it's beyond even that. I mean, it's really beyond that.
I was with the Australians, the New Zealanders, Japan. They all.
If you want to really add them up, we could really add them up. But NATO, basically, European and Canada, and a lot of other nations, they've really band together. They are not happy about what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. They're not happy at all. Neither am I.
Thank you, Mr. President. Liam Costco Fitzgerald. My question is actually for the Secretary General.
Yes.
Mr. Secretary, I don't know if you've seen this, but polling out of Ukraine shows a massive collapse in Ukrainian support for the war. A Gallup poll had it just 23%. That's less than a quarter. Zelensky came out today praising President Trump's proposal for freezing the front lines of battle as part of a ceasefire. He said that's a good compromise. So people view your coming here as, you're lobbying the U.S. government to continue its involvement in the war. You're obviously lobbying for more NATO weapons to be sent to Ukraine, but Ukrainians themselves don't want to fight the war. So how do you justify that morally?
Well, I'm lobbying only for one thing, and that is to make sure that we end this war. And I don't have to lobby the president because we totally agree on this. And this is what he has been doing from day one. Everything he could do to break the deadlock with Putin, get the dialogue going, dialoguing also with Zelensky, and getting this war done. It's crucial. And the fact that the US is now supplying weapons into Ukraine, paid for by allies, is extremely important. And that's now happening since 2-3 months. About $2 billion moving into Ukraine.
The war hasn't wound down. Why do you think that'll wind it down now?
What do you mean?
Do you think more weapons will wind down the war?
No, I mean, there's more to be done. So what you need, what the president said this weekend, stop where you are, so basically do a ceasefire and then have all your discussions about territory and whatever. But first, stop the war. This is what you said on Friday and on Sunday.
It's a war. I mean, your question's really a fair one. It's a war that should have never started.
And
you know how I feel about it. But it's a war that should have never started. And we're not selling any weapons to Ukraine. We're selling them to NATO.
Yeah.
Which is different from before. With Biden, he just gave $350 billion worth of weapons and cash right into Ukraine, and that was so foolish. But we sell them to NATO, and in theory, you can do what you want with them. It doesn't have to be Ukraine, but probably it is mostly.
No, what nations are doing now is buying from this program and making sure that the supply is in Ukraine, so Europeans and Canadians. And for example, these are interceptors for the Patriot systems, crucial to protect the cities. Today, again, a Russian attack has killed children, or at least seriously wounded children in kindergarten in Ukraine. So we need to make sure that the air defense systems are in place, and we need the US systems to do that, and the Europeans are paying for that. And this is exactly the type of actions we needed, and the president is doing that and trying everything to get this war to an end, starting with the ceasefire.
Do you still believe that Putin wants to take all of Ukraine?
I always felt that way. I always felt he wanted to. When I was in my first term, I was I was very close to him, relatively speaking. It was harder because of the Russia hoax. But I would talk to President Putin about Ukraine, and it was the apple of his eye. I'd say it was the apple of his eye, but it would have never happened. He knew the consequences were too great. When we had a rigged election and all of a sudden I wasn't there, he said, wow, I think he looked at Afghanistan, how horribly that was handled, so stupidly. And I think that really gave him a little additional, incentive. I always felt he wanted the whole thing, not a piece of it. But I think now he's willing to negotiate a little bit further, and I think he's willing to make a deal. We'll see. We'll see. We don't want him. We don't want him to have the whole thing.